Week 3, studs and duds. Let's get it started. Of course, we got to start it with the quarterback position. Number 1 is Tua Tagovailoa. 4 touchdowns, 300 plus yards. He went absolutely nuclear today. I got a feeling that a lot of Miami Dolphins are going to be on this list. Next up, we have Justin Herbert. 3 touchdowns, over 400 yards. That's what I'm talking about. 35 fantasy points. Patrick Mahomes only played 2.5 quarters of football. Doesn't matter. 32 fantasy points. He threw 3 touchdowns. Let's go. He did get a little banged up. We're going to have to monitor that. Kirk Cousins also had a fantastic game. He was on my start list. 367 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's a darn good game. And at 5th, we have Lamar Jackson. Only threw for 200 yards, and he had a fumble. But it doesn't matter when you get 101 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Honorable mention to Andy Dalton with 27.5 fantasy points, over 300 yards. And Jordan Love with 26 fantasy points, a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. Pretty good, kid. Quarterback duds. This one was obvious. Daniel Jones going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Yikes. 4 fantasy points, gross. Justin Fields got you 12.6 fantasy points, but it was really ugly and he didn't get these till late. Less than 100 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He did have 47 rushing yards, but gross. Bad game. Just bad game for Justin Fields. Week 3 running back studs. Devon A had an absolutely insane game. 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions for 30 yards, and 2 more touchdowns. The kid had 4 touchdowns today. Oh my gosh. He had 51 fantasy points. That's outrageous. I have a friend who dropped him today. Oh, absolutely brutal. I'm so sorry. Next up, the starting running back for the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert. 82 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns to go along with 7 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. My man had 45 fantasy points. That's absolutely outrageous. My buddy Austin just did a trade with his opponent to get Raheem Mostert 2 days ago. The guy he was trading didn't think he was going to score 45 on him. Yeesh. Didn't see that coming. Kenneth Walker, almost 100 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 50 receiving yards. Very good. 31 fantasy points. Christian McCaffrey, 23 fantasy points. Zach Moss also had 23 fantasy points. I like that 122 rushing yards though, man. That's nice. He did have 30 carries. Man, that's a lot of carries. Honorable mention goes to James Conner with 20 fantasy points. Jerome Ford, 19 fantasy points. Who I had as a sit this week. Didn't do great outside of his 2 touchdowns, but when you get 2 touchdowns, you're going to be on the stud list. Missed on that one. It was not my only miss. Rough week. Jerick McKinnon, 18 fantasy points. On my bench, Travis Etienne, 18 fantasy points. I did have him as a start this week. Running back duds. Craig Reynolds. Oh my gosh. 4 carries for 15 yards. I'm so hot about this one because I benched Jerick McKinnon to start Craig Reynolds. Oh my gosh, that's awful. 1.5 fantasy points. Man, this is a big one. Derrick Henry, 11 carries for 20 yards. Absolutely awful. I said that Browns defense was serious, but I didn't think it was that serious. Dang. Another disappointing day for Joshua Kelce. 11 carries for 12 yards. Are you joking? 2.7 fantasy points. A.J. Dillon. I wasn't big up on him, but 11 carries for 33 yards. My man had 3.3 fantasy points. If you can't produce with Aaron Jones out of the lineup, when are you going to produce? It was a tough matchup, but still. 33 yards? You're killing me, Smalls. I can't even call you Smalls. Your quads are huge. Khalil Herbert, 7 carries for 31 yards. Yikes, 3.5 fantasy points. I had him on my sit list. And to whoever out there was talking about Justin Fields having less carries than Khalil Herbert, I was trying to tell you this week was going to be different. Justin Fields was going to run, and Khalil Herbert was going to suffer. I tried to tell him. Yeah, deserved to be on the sit list. Breece Hall. I was getting some questions about Breece Hall earlier. I'm not trading for Breece Hall. My goodness. 12 carries for 18 yards. My man had 3.7 fantasy points. Gross. Brian Robinson, he had 70 rushing yards, but this is fantasy football. He only had 7 fantasy points. He had 10 carries. That's it. Gross. not necessarily a bust, but underperforming what we expected. Jahmyr Gibbs only having 9.2 fantasy points. He did have 80 rushing yards, which that was good, but people were expecting more from him. Same thing with Bijan Robinson, 10 fantasy points. We were expecting a little more than that, but 10 is fine. That's why you're in the honorable mentions, not necessarily a quote bust. Oh, Ramondre Stevenson, you could be a bust though. 7.2 fantasy points. I know you were going against a tough defense, but wow. 19 carries for 59 yards. That's 3.1 yards a carry. Gross. Wide receiver studs, week 3. Keenan Allen went nuclear today. 18 receptions for 215 yards. He had 47 fantasy points. Are you kidding me? Adam Thielen went off. 11 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown. 31.5 fantasy points. Good job. Tyreek Hill popped off. As usual, no Waddle, no problem. 9 receptions, 157 yards, and a touchdown. 31 points. My goodness. Justin Jefferson, 7 receptions, 149 yards, and a touchdown. 28 fantasy points. Tank Dell. I hoped you picked him up off the waiver wire while you had a chance, because it's about to get tough. 5 receptions for 145 yards and 1 touchdown. 25 fantasy points. Honorable mention to Deebo Samuel, 25 points. Mike Williams, 25 points. And Amari Cooper, 25 points. He was also on my starts list. Week 3 wide receiver duds. Gotta start off with my boy Nico Collins. I thought he was gonna pop off. I was definitely wrong on this one. 2 receptions for 34 yards. He only had 3 targets. I didn't think they'd be up in this game. The Jaguars got their butts kicked. When the Texans are up, they want to run the ball. The problem is they're never up, so they never run the ball. Well, they were this game, and Nico Collins was not a benefactor of that. Yikes. Next up, Calvin Ridley. Back-to-back bad games. Last week he had 5.2 fantasy points. This week he's got 7. Yikes. Not good. Honorable mention to DeAndre Hopkins. He only had 7.8 fantasy points. That was pretty meh performance. Same thing with Lockett, 8.4. It's just meh, not great. Week 3 tight end studs. At the top of the list, Sam Laporta. I was trying to tell y'all to start him. My start of the week. 8 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. 22 fantasy points. Let's go. Tight end number 2, Travis Kelce. 7 receptions, 69 yards and a touchdown for 20 fantasy points. Let's go. You knew he was going to show out when you saw Taylor Swift in the crowds. Tight end 3, George Kittle. Finally, 7 receptions for 90 yards, giving him 16 fantasy points. Pretty good for a tight end. Pharaoh Brown, 15 points. Donald Parham, 14 points. My man had 2 touchdowns on 2 receptions. Wild. 4 yards. Honorable mention to TJ Hawkinson, 14 points. And Evan Ingram, 14 points. Tight end duds. I'm not starting him, but plenty of people out there are starting Dalton Kincaid, 2.3. Yikes. People think they're being slick playing Zach Ertz, 2.6 points. Same thing with Taysom Hill, 3 points. Hunter Henry came back down to earth. Hopefully you traded him while you can, 4 points. This one hurt me personally. Darren Waller, 5 points. David Njoku, 6 points. And an honorable mention for Mark Andrews at 7.5 points. Only really because just disappointing, you know? Not the worst game in the world for a tight end, but he's Mark Andrews. We expected more. Going up against the Colts. What's going on with the Colts? Why is their defense so good? Week 3 defensive studs. Buffalo Bills got you 31 points. Nuts. Touchdown, 2 picks, and a fumble. And 9 sacks. Wow. Only allowed 3 points. That is crazy. Lions dominated Atlanta. 16 points. Browns destroyed the Titans. My sleeper defense of the week. The Chiefs with 12 points. My start of the week. And the New England Patriots. My other start of the week, defensive duds in week 3. The Denver Broncos allowed 70 points. That is absolutely insane. And they also got a touchdown, which added up to -6 fantasy points. The Denver Broncos, wow. Some of you out there were playing the Jaguars though, allowed 37 points. Wow. -4 on the week for the defense. That is ugly. They didn't have a sack, an interception, a fumble, a block, no nothing. I know some of y'all mad about this next one. Ugh, so bad. How about them Cowboys? -2 fantasy points against the Arizona Cardinals. Are you kidding me? They only got 2 sacks and allowed 28 points, giving the defense -2. Yikes. Today was nuts. I gotta go back and watch these games and do a deeper dive. I watch Red Zone on Sundays, so I need to really look at these games to figure out what happened. Like, how did the Broncos allow 70 points? I need to look into that. Also, Sean Payton, all that noise you talked, and you allowed 70 points to get dropped on your head? Last time I checked, the Denver Broncos were one of the best defenses in the league last year. Something's different.